Hey, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. We have a special guest. Rachel Johnson is with us. She is our SEO director at Dealer Alchemist, and we're going to explore some new things that are happening inside SEO at the car dealership level. So you may have heard, or you may have even seen, that clicks are kind of disappearing a little bit. And a lot of those traditional SEO playbooks are really getting rewritten, and artificial intelligence is playing inside there. And it's just not influencing consumer behavior, but it's really deciding who gets seen, who gets skipped, quite frankly, and who wins the lead at the end of the day. So this isn't about theory. It's about digital shift happening right now that has real consequences for dealerships and whether you show up or you don't show up in the moments that matter. So in this session with Rachel, who's going to tell us a little bit about herself here in a second, I'm going to really dive deep into AI overviews and large language models, or LLMs, as we like to use acronyms, and really how to rise up in that zero click moment, right? So if you're still optimizing for traffic, you're already behind. If you're ready to adapt, you're exactly in the right place. So we're going to get into it. Hey, Rachel, how you doing today?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing awesome. Thanks for joining us here today and helping us all in car dealership land really gravitate towards the new way of doing some SEO. And so maybe we'll start off by having a little bit about you and tell us about how you got here. I'm sure you don't wake up in your career and say I want to do SEO, but kind of like me, I just kind of found my way to the car business. So maybe tell me a little bit more about how you got here.
Yeah, so I kind of came about SEO organically, no pun intended. Started out, in content creation. So it was a freelance writer writing, digital content, print content, all that good stuff. Started about, I guess, 23 years ago doing that. And then the more I got into digital content, it was just this natural flow. So when you're writing your content, you want to make sure that it's showing up. So it was having conversations of like, hey, so we created this great content, but nobody's seeing it. It was really in SEO's infancy that I got involved, was there in the days of keyword stuffing and all that good stuff. And so it's just really evolved, so went from the content part of it to the technical part of it to, leading teams of SEOs. So have really been there for the whole gamut of it.
Awesome. Yeah, we've been around the block once or twice with SEO for sure. Keyword stuffing, something I haven't heard in a while, or buying a whole bunch of URLs and redirecting them to the main URL. Like there's a lot of things that we used to do that, good or bad, moved the auto SEO space to where it is today. But I think with AI and some of the things you're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about, the latest generation of how dealers can generate that organic traffic, back to their website. So I'll start off with a question for you, since you're super deep into SEO and help our clients out a lot. I've seen a lot of data showing increases in homepage traffic. It's probably driven by queries that are through AI, right? And the search behavior through AI. From your perspective, why is the homepage becoming such a critical destination again? And how should dealers be thinking differently in that role today?
Yeah, so it's a big change that we're seeing. I mean, we're seeing some data showing, homepage visits up 10%, which is huge. And, that really is, we can point back to the AI overviews and then, the large language models such as the chat GPTs, the perplexity, because they're really looking at, the whole picture, that 10,000 foot view of who somebody is, somebody talking about a website or a digital presence. So they're sending them to that homepage. And so, for a long time, I know, especially in automotive, we have been focusing on, those VDPs. So, getting people to those vehicle, description pages where we want them to engage with the vehicles, what we do. So we've tended to ignore the homepage a little bit. And so it's time to kind of revisit the homepage, make sure that, it's not just a place for pretty banners and, the pop-up of our latest incentive to be, but a place that, we're getting to know that potential user who hasn't engaged with us before.
Yeah, it's awesome how what's old is new and what's new is old again, right? It's definitely a circular pattern that I've seen in my 30 years in the business, right? But it's constantly evolving in different directions, right? So, yes, SEO has been around for a long time. PPC, SEM, whatever you want to call it, right? Digital advertising. We all come up with these crazy acronyms at the end of the day, but in my mind, SEO has been one of the steady eddies, right? And the way to win the long term game is by doing great SEO, right? And that's how dealers are winning today. So, given that trend, what are some of the most important elements that dealerships should focus on when reevaluating their homepage, especially if it's supposed to clearly communicate what they are to both humans and these AI crawlers that are out there.
Yeah. So the interesting thing now is we're kind of seeing a switch up. Over time, organic hasn't really focused too much on branding because there's just been kind of this understanding that you'll show up for your brand. Assuming that you're doing a Google search. So you're going to show up for your brand because your brand is your brand. But now it's like, hey, let's revisit the homepage and make sure, is our branding clear? So if somebody did a search, and clicked through because of an AI overview, or they were in, an LLM like ChatGPT, and they click through, but they are not brand aware. We want to ask ourselves, if they're on our homepage, is it clear who we are? Can they see our brand name? We've kind of decentralized some of that a little bit over time. We also want to make sure that it's clear where we're located. Is your address or contact information easily available? Also, in terms of page optimizations, we want to make sure that we're optimizing for our location. So we're doing both, right? We're playing to that homepage visit, but also playing to kind of old school baseline SEO and optimizing for our locale. Another thing is UX of the homepage. Are there calls to action? So, a lot of users are coming in on that page. We have become accustomed to them diving a little bit deeper in to the site, and seeing that engagement of, 2 or 3 pages, but is there a way to convert? Is there a way to click to call or contact us? Is there a call to action? Huge. And then also, as we were kind of this graphic that we had going on, kind of saw that, is there content on the homepage? We don't want a super long homepage where, there's, a huge scroll, but, any context about who we are is great. We know that these AI crawlers, the LLMs, they're looking for that context about our brand. So even just a little bit of content, about us, who we are, where we're located, our service area, and anything that maybe differentiates our dealership from the competition are great things to have on the homepage.
Yeah, wow, some great tips there, right? And a lot of actionable items, which for the folks listening, taking some of these actionable items and then just going back and inspecting what you expect out of your own sites or SEO strategies, and not just checking a box and hoping and praying that it's getting done. As I said, I've been in this space for about 30 years, and 15 years ago, I would have never dreamt that a website would have a no scroll on the homepage. I would have never thought that would have happened, because scroll and scroll and scroll. But when we look at some of the metrics and the data today, we're really starting up websites that are geared towards the consumer. And once they get to our website, they really don't want to do 5 or 6 things, right? So why not put them all above the fold? They're really not scrolling down and reading all that stuff that we put down there. So I think some of that information is super critical that you put out there. You said that the dealership's name, is now the most important SEO asset, which obviously is true. And we're seeing, AI overviews, pull heavily from brand signals to generate answers. Can you walk me through why branded search has become so valuable, and what's changed in how AI is evaluating the brand presence online?
Yeah, so it's super interesting. So we can kind of see here a great example of, going into this is an example from Perplexity, just searching for, a dealership. So it's interesting to see, what kind of data it pulls in. And, this change is forcing us to think not just about our website, but our full digital presence. So, we need to be thinking about our visibility, our credibility, our influence. Branding, of course, is important on the website, but then it's like, okay, where else are these tools pulling from? We're seeing reviews be a huge aspect of branding. AI overviews and the LLMs, like, Perplexity here, are taking data, all the data they can find, and really weighting reviews. And we're often seeing them, make those recommendations based on reviews. So just some kind of things to think about that in terms of reviews, because we see it come in, the overall sentiment of our customers. Are we currently working on gaining more reviews? Are we relying on them to come in organically? And then looking, maybe for the first time, honestly, what's the overall sentiment of the reviews that we receive? Are there areas of opportunities? Are we responding to our reviews? That's another thing that the AI tools are actually looking at is, are we engaged, with our target audience? Another thing to consider is, do we have more reviews than our competitors? And is our overall review, ranking higher than our competitors? So it's an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, with the with LLMs, we'll just call them AI tools, right? At the end of the day, ChatGPT is a form of or derivative of an LLM. So for those who don't know, really almost the same thing, right? But it's amazing as that has kind of creeped into everybody's life, how SEO has had to manage around that and through that, right? Where before your SEO was all, on page or off page, and there wasn't a lot of connection points between all those. And
Right.
now these AI tools or LLMs, they've got all these extra, connector points, and they're trying to, connect it all together. And the more quality and similar information that you have, the better off your rankings are going to be, just because they now can go to different connection points and see that. So, with AIs now pulling that brand information in from beyond just the dealership website, you're speaking about reviews and social media and press and third party platforms. What are the most important areas they should be investing in to strengthen that brand signal, and online reputation?
Yeah, so I touched on it a bit, but definitely reputation management. It used to be a nice to have. I would say now, just seeing the way that we're seeing, feedback, and the data that's coming through these tools ranked, reputation management's huge. It's a great tool. It can increase the number of reviews that you get and then help improve your overall rating. And then, spending some time with third-party review sites as well. And this is a piece of reputation management, but a lot of times we just think, okay, what are the reviews coming in through Google and Yelp? But let's think about, the other options, Carfax and others. We often see, if we go in and do searches, what is the feedback on my dealership? You'll see some of these are coming back from these third-party review sites, which we want to engage with as well. Make sure that we have a presence there, make sure that we're responding. Social media, I know, there's mixed feelings here. Some people think it works very well. Other people get frustrated by the lack of conversions that we can tie directly to it. But, this is all context that, we're giving these AI tools of, kind of who we are, what's important to us. Also, engaging in community events. And if you're engaging in community events, are you posting about it? Are your community partners posting about your participation? It's also interesting. We're seeing lots of information being pulled from Reddit and forums like that. So, just going out and doing some searches about your dealership, you can kind of see where are people showing up. Kind of an old school thing that we want to stay connected with, that we offer as part of all of our SEO packages, is local citation management. We want to make sure that our name, address, and phone number are synced up and accurate across the internet. Managing local citations, it's great because it helps domain authority, but it also ensures that we're showing up, wherever our target audience and AI tools are looking for us. And really, when we get down to it, that's what we need to be focused on. We need to be showing up and engaging where humans and AI tools are looking for us.
Yeah, I'll pick up on a couple of things that you said there, right? Reputation management and social, right? And then we'll jump into another question here in a second. I've been around long enough to know, reputation management was never, a big part of the strategy at the automotive world, right? And then little by little, we looked at it as a community way or an online way that the community could see that we do a great job for our friends and our neighbors. And we never really looked past that point yet. It's always been an SEO component that can really help you drive further and further organic presence by doing a great job. And now it's just been exemplified and continues to grow that way, right? As more and more sites and these AIs are out there crawling these different sites. And social is the same way. And I agree with you. It's a love or hate relationship, and I get it. I fully get it. But I can tell you when it comes to reach and frequency, social is kind of hard to beat right now. And, when you look at, apps out there like Reddit, like you mentioned, for example, right? 4 years ago, maybe you didn't even know what Reddit was, right? And it didn't have as much popularity, yet now it's booming, right? And there's others out there that are just waiting to kind of, get right in behind Reddit. So I think it's important from a dealership perspective. We always keep an eye on these emerging, we'll call them technologies if you want to, and figure out how we can use them at the dealership level to help grow our business, right? Maybe it does work for your store. Maybe it doesn't work for your store, but the only way to really know is to test it and see if it does. So another question I had for you is, we're seeing, a shift in where users are getting, what they need directly from AI generated summaries. I'd be surprised if we're all not using an AI tool at this point, or multiple. I probably have 7 or 8, maybe even 10. I might be
Agreed.
addicted at some level, right? So with these summaries, and often they don't ever click to the website because they're getting the information where they need it. Can you explain how this, we'll call it zero-click reality, is really changing the way we evaluate success in search, and why rising impressions might just be as important as clicks today?
Yeah, so zero click search is a reality and it's quite uncomfortable. For those of us who've been in marketing for a while, it really is, we need to get comfortable being uncomfortable with this. Like this is a great shot from Google Search Console that's showing that, that impressions are up, that, our ranking, that our position has gone up, but our clicks have gone down. So we're showing up more. We are ranking better, but we are getting fewer clicks. So by old school strategy, it defies logic. But it's because, think about it. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I did a search, needed to get new tires on my vehicle. So I did a search, new shop had opened up around me. So just wanted to check out their pricing. Did a search, never even clicked into their Google business profile, never clicked into their site. I just got their phone number, knew the tire sizes I needed. So just called and had a conversation. My interaction with that tire shop is completely untraceable to analytics. So it's uncomfortable because over the last, 5 to 10 years as marketers, we've all gotten a bit obsessed with traffic attribution. We want to know how somebody came into the site, what pages they visited, how long they spent, how long did it take them to convert. Well, now we're kind of flying blind. And it's all because of these AI tools. And, if we have really listened to what Google's been telling us for probably 5 years is relevance matters, helpful content matters. And Google always tries to match, our query with the best result. Well, they've done that and they've kind of anteed that up to the point now where information is being delivered that gives, somebody information on our reputation, where we're located, our phone number, our address, without them engaging in a way that we can track. So it's why we know we're doing well when we see impressions go up. We're showing up in the places that our searchers are searching. We just can't always attribute success with a click.
Yeah, it's funny how a long time ago we didn't have any of this to try to help us sell and service more cars and make more money doing it. We just didn't have it. And then as it came about and it's constantly evolving, it's important that we evolve with what's happening, right? And not try to hold on to these old truths. And they are old truths because they were accurate back then. But the cheese has moved, right? And every time it moves, we have a decision to make at the dealership level. Do we investigate and move with it, or do we stay where we are, thinking that move might not be good for us? But I can tell you the only way to really make that decision is by really dipping your toe in the water and getting granular with it, and trying to figure out how to best forge a path forward using or really with what's in front of us today. And AI is in front of us today. It's probably not going away at this point, right? I remember when they thought the internet was going away, and that hasn't gone away in 15, 20 years, right? So we have to start embracing it. So if impressions and visibility are really becoming the new battleground. What do you feel are the most important things dealers should be doing now, to make sure their content gets picked up by these AI systems?
Yeah, so it's a funny time. It's an interesting time. Things are shifting, and I know a lot of times when things shift, it can feel like the sky is falling, and it can feel like we need to reinvent the wheel, but we don't. So really showing up with these tools just goes back to SEO best practice with a little bit of layering on it. So if you start to do some research, you're gonna see people saying, "Hey, SEO is dead," or "We're gonna call it GEO now," or "We're gonna call it AEO," and giving it different names. At the end of the day, it's still all SEO. And so, like I said, if Google's been telling us for a while, relevance matters. And so if we kind of stick to that, we know that to show up on the internet, we need mobile friendly sites that load quickly. We need existing pages that are optimized. I say all the time, Google at the end of the day is a pattern detection system. And the AI tools are the same thing. They're looking for patterns. Now they're fanning out a little bit and looking for reputation, but that's why we need to make sure all the best practices are in place before we try to layer anything else on. And then we want to make sure any content that is on our website, it's relevant to our business. Again, that pattern detection, making sure that we're sending those strong signals. And then just having complete metadata and schema markup. I don't want to get too, SEO nerdy there. But, just both on and off page optimizations are working well together.
Yeah, some more great tips and tricks in there for sure. Earlier you started talking about, traditionally how we were, really judging, our efforts, right? And we've traditionally judged SEO success on keyword rankings and, traffic, but that model seems to be evolving quickly into a different direction. From your perspective, what are the biggest mindset shift dealers need to make when it comes to measuring, the visibility in an AI driven search landscape?
Yeah, so I think we need to kind of admit, as hard as it is, that traffic alone may just be a vanity metric. I've long said if all we're measuring is traffic, we can put a funny cat video on our site and we will have all the traffic in the world. But
Yeah.
again, is it relevance? And so pulling our brains a little bit out of that hyper focus on traffic attribution and thinking about is the traffic relevant. So again, thinking about impressions and maybe being open to some different metrics, and taking a step back a little bit out of the data. We're always going to want to make decisions based on the data that we have, but taking it a little bit of a step back, and just remaining open, especially in this time where high change, seeing some drastic changes to the data. So knowing that just because we're seeing fewer clicks into the site and maybe less engaged sessions in our sites does not mean that we're failing.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? The yardsticks have moved, right? And, we need to understand that, right? And if we're looking at metrics that we're always used to looking at and expecting us to match up with them, yet, the chains have moved, we might be looking at metrics that aren't really helping us grow the store, and for the dealers that really want to adapt, what are the new metrics and the KPIs they should start tracking right now to get a clearer picture of the visibility across these AI powered search results?
Yeah, so I think we touched on it a little bit. Impressions. So we have seen a direct correlation between optimizing and impressions. So we know when we've optimized, for highly relevant, transactional keywords, that we are seeing an increase in impressions, even if we can't tie clicks to them. In terms of our organic search, keyword rankings are still important. We still want to show up for high intent keywords because there are always going to be people who default to a traditional search. Just because these tools are new and shiny now and a lot of us are engaging with them doesn't mean that we all do, and it doesn't mean that any of us do all the time. So organic rankings are always going to be a baseline for us. With branding, kind of new to us, keeping a track of brand mentions is great. There's actually a free tool called Google Alerts that you can set up and kind of see where your brand is being mentioned, what the general sentiment is. And, it can sometimes give you some ideas of, oh man, like, we were sponsors for this community event And we never even mentioned on our social media, but our partners in the community have, and so it can give you some ideas of different ways that we can show up. And then here on the screen, we can see something that we pull into our monthly performance reporting is just overall visibility. So looking at our visibility in search, search results, we want to know that we're showing up where it's relevant. We can see this, fluctuate, throughout the month, throughout a quarter, just as algorithm updates kick off, as others are optimizing for our own space. But being honest and transparent, where is our visibility and how is that changing over time? And then, with that data, strategizing around it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Google Alerts, right? I've used them since they've been out. I still use them today. It's one of those things that I think when it first came out, people gravitated towards, and then they kind of stepped away from, right? But I think that was really good advice you just gave, setting up Google Alerts, on keywords such as their dealership, right, or other keywords that because you can put a lot in there, right, and see what alerts are coming up for that. So I think that's a really good tip. I don't
Another
want to.
option
Yeah,
too is, sorry, another option too is, if you're seeing that your competitors are coming in through, the LLM tools or searches and ranking above you, is also putting a Google alert on your biggest competitors, seeing
yeah,
what the difference is and what the sentiment is there. Sometimes we can gain a lot of insight just by looking at what the competition is doing.
yeah. That's a really good advice, right? Look, see what the competitors are doing, right, good or bad,
Yep,
and making sure you're staying, alert of what they're doing. So, I don't want to, in the webinar think that AI is going to control everything we do in the car business, right? At the end of the day, there's still humans out there. Um,
absolutely.
and we see, AI overviews really prioritize as concise and structured content, when they're looking to surface those answers. Can you walk me through how that content strategy really needs to be evolved, and not just for AI tools, but for humans that, real readers, real users, with shorter attention spans? We've got to be able to meet both needs, right?
Yep. And so I think it's a great place to kind of start. I know when things shift, it's easy to think, oh, we have to do things completely different. So want to lend the message, like there's some things that are always going to be, content is always going to be a focus, for SEO. We need it to show up. But, we should really be focusing on, again, that, visibility, credibility, influence. So any content that we're creating with that in mind, and making sure that it's relevant. I know, for a long time in SEO, the deliverable has been content, so we're just creating content to create content. And we need to shift our focus away from that a little bit. Sometimes that just, the content that we're creating doesn't really serve a purpose. It's not going to convert. The deliverable is showing up where our searchers are searching. And the deliverable is conversions from organic traffic. And so kind of breaking that cycle of creating content to create content. Don't want to get too technical, but it can create, sitemap bloat. So, all of our great pages aren't necessarily being crawled as often as they should be because we have all this content that maybe is not even serving a purpose for us. Also, long form content, with shorter attention spans, we all like to make a Google search and get an answer quickly. That's why these AI overviews and LLMs are doing such a great job, because they are summarizing information. So if we can, keep our content, very, succinct, on point, ask and answer questions, bullet points work really well. FAQ style content works really well. And again, this is for the human. So we know it works for the human. The human has a shorter attention span, which is what these AI tools are playing on. So we're not chasing the AI tools. We're developing content and structuring our pages in a way that it works for the human user, which also works for, the AI tools.
Yeah. For those of you who know myself or Rachel, we can get pretty nerdy with some stuff. But the reason we do that is because we've dug so deep into this to help dealers grow their business, and not only from a website perspective or an SEO perspective or digital advertising perspective, because we know it all has to work together to grow the store. So, Rachel's given us some incredible actionable items today that, we could all go back to the store and experiment with and try. I'm going to kind of recap a couple of maybe 5 quick recap takeaways. Rachel, keep me honest. Or maybe there's a 6th in there, but for me, the top 5 takeaways were homepage is your first and sometimes only impression, right? So we need to make sure that thing is buttoned up and driving the most impression share that it possibly can, even if it doesn't convert. Like, let's talk about that again, right? Number 2 was branded search is still your most valuable keyword, right? At the end of the day, we need to win at that keyword level every day, every minute that people are searching. Number 3 for me, which comes as a shock, which, I probably didn't give a lot of thought to until you said it, was impressions matter even without clicks, right? And I think that's a motto we need to start thinking about in the industry, that impressions do matter even if it's without a click, because we are so click driven and focused, because that's what we've always known, that I think it might be time to open our brains a little bit and think about how those impressions matter. Number 4 is really building out those new KPIs to track visibility, not just traffic, right?
Right.
Once again, I think we've just somehow, Rachel, we've all gravitated towards like, here's your KPIs and here's how you sell more cars and make more money doing it. And that's great, because that got us to where we are today in 2025, but that game has changed, right? And we need to look at some new KPIs that are going to help us grow, that store in ways that we haven't done before. And the last one for me that I got out of the webinar was, the content really needs to serve humans first, but it really needs to feed the AI engines, right? So those are my big 5 takeaways. Anything else you'd like to add to
No,
that?
I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, and I think it's also important to note, we're in a time of shifting, and so our data and our guidance here will continue to evolve. The important thing is that SEO, as we have known it, is not going away. It's just a new layer. And so we're really focused on brand. We're focused on overall brand sentiment, and kind of controlling and evolving that. So we're layering that onto traditional SEO metrics. It's honestly an exciting time in SEO. I know there's some people who have crazy ideas and they're like, now's the time to move away from SEO. I think now's the time to pay attention to your SEO. Now's the time to invest if you're not invested and you want to have a partner, because it's that partnership of, hey, more eyes on this, the better, and then kind of helping, we help our dealers navigate through this. These topics are already being discussed, in our meetings with dealers. They'll be continued to be discussed as, we're, learning more, finding more data. I always say SEO is like a big experiment. You're always testing, testing, making small tweaks. And sometimes you find a tweak that works and then you try to copy, paste, repeat, And so I think that's, we're very definitely in a new era where testing and being open is the game right now. But exciting time for sure.
Yeah, awesome for sure. There comes a time in the car business when you have to double down, right? And if I were looking to double down, I think I would definitely double down on SEO right now. Even way back in the beginning of SEO, I doubled down way back when, 10, 15 years ago. And that proved to be incredibly powerful for the dealer groups that I was working for. Right. And then, like you said, Rich, I think, maybe we kind of got away from it. Maybe there were some thoughts about SEO, but I can tell you right now, I would be doubling down on this especially with the AI tools that are out there, because it's not your typical SEO anymore. It's not just technical and content driven SEO like the old days. There's a whole new sheriff in town. And if you're going to double down now's the time to win. So I felt like we covered a ton today.
Ton.
But it all comes down to this: the dealers who adapt, they always win. They always win. Whether it's homepage optimization, branded search authority, creating content for both humans and AI, because both have to love it. But the shift isn't the future. It's actually happening right now. So don't just absorb these insights, these incredible insights that Rachel, put out there, but I would implore you to act on them. And if you're not really sure where to start, schedule your one-on-one consultation with us, and let's just make sure your store thrives in this zero click era that we're in. That uh, assessment that we'll do will kind of help and see where your brand shows up in the AI overviews, right? That's important. If you don't know today where you are, maybe it's a really great place to start and figure out where you are today and where you really should be. What is your homepage really doing for you? We'll look at that in the assessment, and really where are the opportunities to grow right now. So on the screen is my contact information. If you want to talk really, really deep SEO, I promise I will pull Rachel out of the SEO castle that she's in, because she is in there hunkered down doing great things with our clients. But feel free to give me a call. My email address is on the screen. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to get that one-on-one consultation about where you are with your AI overviews, let us know. But thank you, Rachel, for coming on today. As always, wealth of information. I learned a few things myself, so I'm going to go back and take some of those things on the road with me and make sure my dealers are doing them as well. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Y'all have a great day.